Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan for another Inside the Birds. And Adam, finally, we can all move on with our lives because the Eagles have finally announced their massive, sweeping front office and scouting staff changes that we've been talking about for about a week and a half now. And there were really some interesting names and titles there that are on the list that we'll go through. But after that, we can kind of tie it all up. Today, in this episode, we'll tie it all up, move on, and it'll be more about the players and the X's and O's as we go forward. We'll have a little bit on that today. But remember, last week we were kind of discussing, man, I hope they come out with this list soon because the longer this drags on, it's just, you start to wonder who's in what spot. But now we can at least try, emphasis on try, to make sense of all the moves, because as we have said in other podcasts, and I wrote it on InsideTheBirds.com, now that the moves have been made and announced, I don't think our questions prior to the list being announced have gone away as far as who's setting the board, who is the scout that is going to replace Andy Weidel as Howie Roseman's number 2 guy. And when we get into the list, we'll explain why that's still a question. And then the question you've asked, and I agree with, is, why so much change after 2 pretty good off seasons and 2 pretty good drafts? What direction is the team going in? So we'll get into that. And then if we got some time, we'll get into some of the press conferences last week as the team gets ready. They're doing the OTAs. They're going to have their total team OTA some point this week coming up here. And then after this week, I think they are done, right? Like that's it. Between now and the end of this week in training camp, which is
they'll be
almost hard to believe.
They'll be the first team done. The Eagles and Bengals are the only 2 teams not to have a mandatory camp. We've explained why it's a trade from the head coach with the players, make sure everyone shows up for the non-mandatory stuff. So that was the sort of trade-off that they had, and the Bengals did the same thing. Although the Bengals their OTAs aren't done until next week. So the Eagles, for the second straight year, are the first team off. So good for them. But the football doesn't start, and we'll do our best to explain what we know. We've checked in with several sources around the league. A lot of people who've worked with previously for the Eagles who know Al Calabi. We first reported he was getting a promotion a couple weeks ago. I'm feeling a little bit better about it. I was, when we first got wind of this, I'm like, they're not. They're really going to give him a big title. Yeah, they are. Bigger title than we expected.
Right.
But I feel a little bit better because, as you said, I mean, they've done so well the last 2 seasons. Why break things up? We'll do our best, as you said, to explain this and what people around the league see, and people know the Eagles building better than anyone. We've got some pretty good sourcing on this, so we'll explain it to the best of our ability, as you said, and we'll get through that. And then, obviously, the other one was the I hate to say bombshell, but surprise that Shane Steichen, the Eagles offensive coordinator, dropped on the media. Like, I just was kind of like, whoa, he's calling the plays? Okay, that was interesting.
It was something that they sort of hinted at last year, but they made it cloudy, right? And we'll talk about it a little bit, but they made it cloudy because it's sort of like like he's calling the plays, but I have the ability to overrule. So it's it's like, well, then without us knowing which plays you called and you let him call, which plays you overruled, it's hard to sit here and diagnose either one as the play caller. So, but yeah, I don't think people remembered that as much because they only sort of hinted around it last year.
So that was interesting. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have some opinions on that, and we were able to talk to someone who worked with the Chargers with Steichen, and we could get a better idea of how he sees the game, which I thought was interesting. But overall, the dizzying amount of changes the Eagles had to their football operations and scouting.
There you go. All right, 2 quick things. One, Q&A. They will do their 4th installment of their 5-part series this week. So they've done, their kind of return episode, and then of course they had a full diagnosis of the defense and a full diagnosis of the offense. They got a couple of things that they want to talk about this upcoming podcast as well, but also they're in kind of let's take your questions mode. So if you have any questions for Quentin Michael or Jason Avant, you can email us at insidethebirds@gmail.com and just put in the subject line you have a question for both or one of them, and we'll make sure that it gets to them and they'll be able to answer them in their podcast. So something tells me that somebody's going to be asking them. Well, I guess the only one who would know. No, Jason was there, right? Yeah. The whole Deshaun Jackson, Donovan McNabb story that just picked up a whole lot of conversation.
Can you explain? There've been some crazy things that Tom Brady had a bizarre through this golf thing he had last week.
Right.
He made a comment about retirement again, and people are like flummoxed. But what the hell are you talking about? There were 2 or 3 things that players said this past week. Actually, a couple weeks ago, LaShawn McCoy kind of very critical of Eric Bieniemy. No one knew where that came from.
Right.
And then there's Deshaun Jackson, and I guess he did a podcast and he talked about Donovan McNabb. What is
it's a good podcast. I myself don't listen to a ton of podcasts, but I think their podcast is called I Am Athlete, and it's got LaShawn McCoy's in it, Brandon Marshall's in it. There's somebody else who all of a sudden isn't coming to my mind. There've been a couple of different and they usually have a different NFL player or somebody. So it's good because it's just like people say our podcast sometimes like talking football in a bar, right? That's their thing. They're just former athletes talking about the game. And
cool.
Deshaun stopped by, and I only saw the probably the part of the clip on Twitter that everybody else saw or social media. But it's always funny when somebody starts off a conversation or a story like, oh, me and this guy are friends, me and this guy are tight, no disrespect intended, but then you go and disrespect that person when you tell your story, which, Deshaun definitely threw Donovan under the bus, and perhaps deservedly so, just basically saying, Donovan tried to treat him like a typical rookie and make him do things that he wasn't going to do. And then he tried to charge him $25 to get into a party. I mean, and his biggest beef was that he said Donovan, if you remember, Deshaun that year made the Pro Bowl as a wide receiver and a kick returner. And I think he was the first player in NFL history to make the Pro Bowl at 2 different spots. And he claims that Donovan was talking to other people on the team, including Michael Vick, saying that Donovan was saying that he didn't think Deshaun deserved that.
Oh.
So that clearly got back to Deshaun. I don't know. I mean, I know Deshaun and Vic were tight. I don't know if it was Vic who told him, but.
But why did this come up though? What precipitated this? Like anything in there?
What precipitated Deshaun telling that story?
Yeah. Why would it now? Yeah.
That's a great question. I don't know because I only saw the clip that people watched on social media. I don't know how the conversation started. Gotcha. It was just talking about quarterbacks and McNabb. And really, if you get to see it. It basically got that way because LaShawn McCoy was egging Deshaun on, saying, "You gotta tell him a story. You gotta tell him a story. Tell him about the time he made you pay at a party. Tell him about this. Tell him about that."
Shady knows. Shady's okay. I'm gonna listen to it. I'm glad you brought. I've always enjoyed hearing Brandon Marshall speak.
Yeah.
He's been obviously through a lot in his life and his career. I like to hear it. Good stuff. Okay, I Am Athlete, right? Good.
I think that's called I Am Athlete. Yeah.
Sounds right.
So I'm sure some people are. Whenever this happens, people ask Quentin Michael, people who are in the locker room, what happened? Was Donovan like that? Was this that? So those 2 guys are probably going to have to either come to Donovan's defense or come to Deshaun's defense.
Right. Sure. Pick one of the sides, but I will pay. I actually will pay if they can get Donovan and T.O. on. I will literally pay. Okay. I know of. There was a I won't say who the players in case it didn't get out, but I just know that a former Eagles player, when they were all together, when T.O. and Donovan were together, got them together for dinner, and they literally said nothing to each other during this dinner. This player got them together many years ago. I guess during their playing time. So and you, so if you remembering your story, so you were just starting. What year did you start covering the Eagles? Was the backup guy?
I was like the general assignment guy in 2005, and then I was the B guy in 2006.
Okay, so you were there for the driveway, Drew Rosen house, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah,
Or,
next question. Not the
right.
driveway one where he did
Oh,
all the
oh,
workouts, but I was
okay,
there for Drew
okay.
Rosenhaus's next question press conference.
Because McNabb and Owens, the first year together, were so magical. It just, I mean, we've seen, we'll see with Hurts and AJ Brown this season. There's no way it can match McNabb and T.O., obviously, but they
Right.
could have a pretty good, we know that Brown and Hurts are very close friends.
Hmm.
But that being there in training camp, the 10,000 fans per practice, or early on, I don't know if it ended training camp like that, but it was just something magical. Like you just can't believe it was really cool to be there and to see how it blew up a year later. It's just almost hard to believe. But
Yeah. Did,
as you know, covering the team nearly 20 years, these craziness of the relationships in the building, whether it's front office people, players, it's just crazy how this stuff goes on decade after decade.
you can't rest. Just when you think that things are hunky dory and smooth,
Exactly.
something is always
Exactly.
around the
Yeah.
corner. Wait, let me ask you. Did you say Donovan and Tio had to have they had to go to a dinner together and like what, patch it
So
out and then
something, yeah, something like I don't know. During the time they were there, I think no, they didn't have to. Someone invited them
Oh, okay.
together for some sort of dinner or some night out. I don't know, whatever the heck it was. This is many years ago, obviously,
Right.
nearly 20 years ago. But but it apparently didn't work, and it's just amazing how I remember being there in '04 when after the trade or when they were together at training camp, and how you could see their chemistry was terrific.
Yeah.
Then it all changed. Then ESPN interview, which
Oh
the
God,
next
I
summer,
remember that. Yeah.
and I was like, oh, this is this is not
Not
good. What
good.
the hell?
It's just funny because when you said them like having to be at a dinner and not talking to, I think of like the Days of Thunder scene where the two guys, the race car, it's Tom Cruise and oh man, I can't remember his name. It'll come to me after I'm done. But you know when they rent the car, they have to meet for dinner to patch things up, and then they both rent cars, and then they do like a car race that they just smash up the cars on the way to the dinner, and then they just kind of sit down. And Fred Thompson's there. He's
Oh,
like the
Fred Thompson.
commissioner
Oh
who's
my
got to
God.
settle
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they literally race each other toward the dinner, making like mean faces at each other the whole time, smashing up their rental cars just so that they could beat the other one to the dinner. Someone should take that scene and you know how they cut and like do picture like somebody's head now
Yeah.
on somebody else's head, so they should put Donovan and Tio's head
Yeah.
on the two
Memes
guys and then
especially.
have that. That would
Right.
have been funny. All
It's
right.
just. I'm just gonna say it just it just should be. It should have been magical together. They should have played at least 4 to 5 years
Oh, it
together.
would have been amazing. It
And
would have
just
been. It really would have been great.
I mean, all of the football you and I have watched in our football coverage careers, in terms of a quarterback and wide receiver chemistry, is pretty magical. But we
Yeah, that
digress.
2004. I mean, those first 10, 11 games, 12 before he got hurt. I mean, man, they were just connecting every game, like touchdown, 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 touchdown. It was really amazing. It was almost too good to be true. It really was. That's why it didn't last
Oh,
long because it was just so perfect. Those two together and Andy Reid's offense was
oh,
unbelievable.
and
And
wasn't the first preseason game? Didn't they go for a bomb on the first play?
yeah, first play, first play. I think they did it in training camp too. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just
Oh, yeah,
it
yeah,
was it
yeah.
was very
Oh
literally
man.
too good to be true. I mean, that's how good it
Th-
was.
There are parts, and I'm sure that our listeners know this. When you go to a game as a fan, you're seeing something magical where you go, "Wow, this is pretty cool." It was like when Brady, when Brady tore up the Eagles' defense in that practice,
Yeah.
that training camp, when they had to join practice here in Philly.
Hmm.
That was crazy when he was like 27 for 27. The ball never hit the ground. Every pass was with anticipation.
Yep.
That was special just to me for loving football and seeing someone that great, someone that elite. And we'll see. We'll see with this team going forward, what they can do together, Brown and Hurts.
All right. So again, get your questions out to Q&A through insidethebirds at gmail.com. And please keep checking out our newsletter. I thank everybody who has signed up so far. It's getting more and more popular each week, and we're trying to spice it up even more each week. Adam did a great job answering 2 Ask ITB questions on the newsletter. So again, if you ask a question through the newsletter, we'll definitely answer it there as well. So please continue to subscribe and continue to tell other people to subscribe as well. And also, if you're on Apple Podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. Really, really appreciate those who do. Really helps us with our rankings, and then that helps us be able to, market the podcast even more and do some other things. So if you continue to leave us 5-star reviews and ask a question within your review, we will promise to answer that as soon as we possibly can as well. Let's move on. We'll talk about some of the front office stuff that is finally official. I don't know whether to bring this up first or wait, but it's on my mind and I don't want to forget it because I'm not gonna remember it by looking at the names. At one point, we said Julian Lurie was going to have a full-time job with the Eagles. We were hearing that. That's what we were hearing, right? A couple days later, Bo Wolf from The Athletic confirmed it. Even had the title that was business and football operations?
Strategy.
Yeah. All right. And one of the points I made was that, and I'm trying to give the Eagles credit here. I think it's a good thing. We had this discussion. It's a good thing if he's going to take over the franchise, if he wants to someday, which Jeffrey Lurie has said if he wants to, it's his. It is a good thing that he went through the 2-year rotational program, that he starts off with a job like this, that he learns the business, learns what he needs to learn, and he doesn't just walk into the job one day. I think
exactly.
This is a good thing. So it's a little weird to me. I just wish the Eagles, I hope that they're transparent, and when they announce all the changes in the front office and structure and everything like that it says Julian Lurie's name and his title, and they don't worry about what kind of response that might elicit, because it's not going to matter. People are going to know anyway. And they announced the list of new changes within the scouting department and the football operations department, and his name's not on it. Now, it's possible that they consider this a different department. Like Don Smolenski is the president of the team. Anybody who works under him, they don't put press releases out. But I have a hard time feeling that this is on the business side, because the title, again, is football. It's business and football strategy. So I don't know. Maybe they don't even have a specific department. I don't know who his boss is. Yeah, immediate
boss. Have a boss?
I know, that's my point, is that he's got a role on the team here. You should acknowledge it. It was a team source that acknowledged it to Bo Wolf. So someone from the team basically said, yes, he's got a full-time job here. Again, they've done the right thing as far as getting him training, right? And building him up here. Why not be a little bit more circumspect, or no, the other opposite, forthcoming about it, and just say this is his title officially, and this is his department? Don't you think that would have been a smart idea?
Yeah, I was called a minor surprise that wasn't announced, but it's been reported by us and others that he has an office in the building, wherever that is.
Right.
He has an office. We know. In fact, you were not only the first person to report it. Let's move this forward here.
Yeah.
You'd reported on our show a year ago that he was in the head coaching interviews, and then. Do you have anything else to add to that?
It's just that not only he was in the interviews, and I was told once by someone who knew about the interviews, was that he had a binder with him. We know he's analytics driven. Okay, that's no secret. We've talked about him. He's a fond of analytics. He's very close to Alec Hallaby, who we'll talk about in a minute, who has been presiding over the analytics staff. So, as I was told, Julian had a binder full of analytics and data, statistics, things like that. So what he was doing with that binder, I don't know. He brought it with him to the interviews. Maybe he wanted to show, the prospective candidates, how they view analytics, what they're doing. I don't know. I just know that he had a binder full of analytically and statistical driven information with him. So if you bring that to an interview, I'm guessing you're using it for something, but that's the point, is that he's going back to even last year. Before this time, his involvement was starting to pick up. We've talked about the fact that we've been told that he's been on some meetings, many meetings, Zoom meetings. Now, again, I don't know if he's saying anything or just observing. It doesn't even matter to me at this point. It's just that the point is he's got a role. He's being involved. He's moving up here. Jeffrey Lurie has even talked about it. I just thought that he should have. I'm surprised, I guess, like you, minorly surprised that he was not listed on the press release. But I hope that's not for a reason that the Eagles are afraid to do it, because you can't avoid it. I heard people discussing it on Sports Talk Radio this weekend.
Yeah.
And by the way, most people are saying what we're saying, whereas you obviously can't control the owner giving the team to his son or daughter or wherever it is. You can't control it, so
Yeah.
you hope that they just go about it the right way, and we think they are.
Yeah. So on last Monday's show, folks, if you didn't hear it, we discussed it first before the news got out elsewhere. We said what we're hearing. He's involved, Julian Lurie. He's trying more to learn the business, the scouting end. I don't know about the business stuff. It's the first I'd heard of that. Bo Wolf reported for the Athletic. We weren't aware of the business part of it, and I have no idea if that's happening, what that would entail. See, he might just be taking an overview of learning both sides, because if you're going to own the team, you're going to take from your dad, 4 to 5 years from now, you got to learn the entire business. That's what I said last week. You might as well start now. Don't start, as you said, 6 months before, and I'm going to take everything over. Well, it's not enough time. You need years. You need meetings, countless meetings. You need to be around people. You need to get to know them, and
Right.
so forth. Because he's a young guy. He's in his mid-20s, 26, 27.
Yeah. Yeah, late 20s, I thought. I thought he was closer to 30.
I
I'd
think
have
it
to
was
go
listed
go back and look.
somewhere. So someone put out that he's only 26, because Hallaby apparently is significantly older than he is.
Okay.
Because Alex been with the team what?
Oh, he's been with
Well,
this is his 14th year with the team.
yeah.
I mean, he was
Alex
hired
has
very
been.
young, but yeah. Yeah.
Well, he's got to be in at least his mid-30s. So
I
yeah,
would think
he's
so, yeah.
obviously much older than Julian. But
Mhm.
nevertheless, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what they do with that. But
I
it
heard
is interesting.
go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just interesting that they still split football operations and scouting. They're all under football, but
Right.
they have the operations side and they have the scouting side. But I still don't quite understand if Alec Halby got the assistant GM job, shouldn't he be under scouting? It's just
You
me,
would
but
think.
hey, yeah.
I heard Glenn Macnow on WIP over the weekend make I thought, a pretty fair assessment of the situation with both Julian and Alec and all that, saying that we don't know right now what this all means. Julian working in the front office, it's certainly valid to have some kind of concern that when the owner's son, who's going to take over if he wants to, has a job, that you worry about that owner's son. Everybody kind of like trying to acquiesce, and maybe the owner's son trying to already establish the power. That's a legitimate concern. However, what Glenn said is, I'm not going to be angry in advance. He said, if I in a year from now or 2 years from now they have bad drafts and they're doing things wrong and news leaks and people like you and I, Adam, report that, oh man, Julian Lurie is like Jeffrey has allowed Julian to usurp everybody, and we'll find out about it. We'll know and we'll report it as such if that happens. But we can't sit here today and be angry or judgmental about something that we have yet to see the results of. And I think that's the
100%.
fairest way to look
Yep,
at it. Of course, you can
100%.
have concerns if you want to have concerns.
Sure.
You could also be the other side. You could say, hey, Jeffrey Lurie, if you believe this as a fan, has been the best owner that the Eagles have ever had. So I'm kind of happy that his offspring is going to come up through the ladder and learn from Jeffrey and Tess. Some people believe that too. That's fine. I'm just saying, like, it's almost fruitless right now to say it's going to be a disaster or it's going to be this, that, or the other before it ever happens.
Whatever his involvement is, should be an apprenticeship. You're learning the family business.
It should be, yes.
Family business is the football team.
Right.
Not every team has that. Like, okay, for the Joneses, yes, the football team is their family business. They have other businesses, but it is their main business. This is Jeffrey Lurie's business, the football team. We know he's a movie producer on the side, but this is his business here. And the son who's going to get the team if he wants it down the road, nobody. I know people are speculating how many years that could be. No one has any idea. There's no way to know that. And I don't know if Jeffrey knows that when he wants to step down. But whenever that happens, it's good that this is what I talked about last Monday to move this on here. This is what I mentioned, and now it's happening one way. It's happened one way or the other, whether he has a title or not, doesn't matter.
Right.
He's there. We know this for a fact.
Yeah.
And others have reported as well. So we'll see what transpires over the months and years with Julian learning the business and what kind of involvement. That's the thing I would like to know over the next year or so.
Agree.
And because with all these title changes and football operations changing, they're going to be more analytical, if you could believe that. Whatever that means.
Right.
We were tipped to this about a month ago, and I was like, how is that even possible? And we'll see that if that's even happening. Though Alec Halby is, quite frankly, we'll get into him in a minute. I mean, if you look at him and John Ferrari now, they first time ever, Eagles have never used the assistant GM tag, and now they are, and it's ironic that they get the assistant GM tag for the first time in Eagles history. Someone got it. 4 people leave the organization, and they became assistant general managers.
Right.
I don't want to explain that.
All right, so let's get in. That's a good segue into our next topic. Assistant general managers. The Eagles now have 2. They went from 0 to 2, which is fascinating. All right. Yeah, I don't think they've ever had an AGM since I can remember. So now they've got 2, right? And one of them is John Ferrari, who we've talked about, who was previously the director of compliance and
football
operations. And one of them is Alec Hallaby, who was director of football administration, I believe.
He was his last promotion was VP of football operations and strategy.
Right. I'm sorry, vice president of football operations and strategy.
Yep.
All right. So these guys are both assistant general managers, which theoretically places them kind of tied as the number 2 person in the Eagles front office under Howie Roseman. And that really jumps out at you because neither of these guys really is a model of Andy Weidel. They are not scouts. They are not guys who have spent their life poring over tape and analyzing players from a tape standpoint. They are not guys who have ever, they've not been scouts in any other organization.
They've not been involved with player personnel ever.
Right. They're not personnel people. So that is the biggest question mark that comes out. You lose Andy Weidel, who set your draft board, Howie Roseman makes all the decisions, but he is the catalyzer for all of the scouts, and he presides over the scouting department, and he himself is a scout who came up through the Ravens chain. And now you don't have someone that high ranking in that position. You have 2 guys who are not that. So what do you take from that?
Yeah, so Hallaby's player personnel experience is only on analytics. Is it player evaluation? Yes, but not from the tape study, as you said. That it's important to make that distinction.
Right.
So let's start. We're going to start with Ferrari first. So I talked to a GM on Sunday, who has been on calls with him. This is actually when he worked in the league office. He was literally. This guy can't say he was on every rules call, but Ferrari is a rules expert. He's tremendous value to the Eagles because of his various roles with the NFL's office when he worked for the NFL, in New York. So that's got tremendous value. Now, what I find fascinating is he was a director of football. He was previously director of football operations and compliance. He was the league's liaison. It's the best way someone said he was the NFL's liaison with the Eagles, to the league office. Like he was the guy who had the relationships, and whenever they had an issue, he would take care of it. So then the question would be, well, if he doesn't have a personnel background, why give him the AGM tag? Well, no one could come in over him now. So let's say you made him VP of player for personnel, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you could technically bring someone in over him as an assistant GM. Well, they've now eliminated that. Unless there's a made-up title you and I have never heard of, no one could come in over him. So, A, that's one thing. And B, if another team comes after him and finds out that he's brilliant and they heard great, that maybe they know him from the NFL office, the only way you could get him out is as a GM. So the question would be, because he doesn't have a player personnel background, would anyone really want to hire him as a GM? That's the question.
So what you're saying is there's some, what's the word I'm looking for? Some sort of like backhanded brilliance in promoting 2 guys to AGM who probably would never be GMs for any other team, because now you're not worried about losing them to a GM position. You've promoted them. You've given them more money. And as you have said many times, I agree with this, like with what the Eagles do, the title doesn't always tell you the responsibility. I'm not sure either of these guys is going to be doing anything differently than what they're already doing. But now it's less likely that they're poached by another team for another position, because in order to poach one of these guys, you'd have to make them the general manager of your team, which no team is going to do because they're not that kind of guy.
I would disagree slightly on Hallaby because he's really, really smart.
Uh-huh.
You and I know some people who worked for the Eagles in the past who I would say they weren't quite fans of Alec in the beginning.
Right.
But what they said in recent years is he's been more. His issue was he was very heavy-handed back under Chip Kelly. He got reassigned with Howie Roseman. There were some people just were not Al Calabi fans. Will be kind about it, to say the
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
Who worked for the Eagles many years ago,
Mm-hmm.
but people have said in recent years who've dealt with him, who've moved on, they kind of grew to like him because he's really smart. He's now more willing to see their side from a tape. Maybe I don't know how to say it whether it's tape study or more because you've got strictly analytics guy and numbers guy in Halaby to the pure football people.
Mm-hmm.
He's gotten older, maybe.
It's possible he learned that under Andrew Berry, by the way, who was analytics driven, but also a football guy, for lack of a better word. So maybe
also
he
really
understood.
Kind person, right?
Yeah.
Easy to deal with, easy going. But whatever the case, there's no way to quantify this. But I would just say, based on what we've heard, he's become better. His relationships with people have been better. Because analytics people, if you polled 32 teams, they've got this negative that comes from football people. They're jealous of them. They don't like that the analytics people get so much juice in the building. But the people are more willing to accept them, understanding that, you know what, they offer something that we weren't quite aware of. They give you what the eyes can't see. That's got a tremendous amount of value. And to the Eagles, who are super analytical, going back to '94 when Jeffrey Lurie and Joe Banner came in. Halaby, by the way, he didn't get the job because he's friends with the family. He actually had to interview. Someone close to the situation told me, who knows, who's known Halaby many years, said that he actually interviewed. Mm-hmm. And whatever, as you said, 14 or 15 years ago, whoever interviewed him or the people who interviewed him felt that he was worth bringing in. He's worked his way up. I know he's been through a lot, with people and so forth. But apparently I say they call it bedside manners apparently better. So that's a positive. But I still struggle. Just I'll get to you in a sec. Mm-hmm. This thing that I struggle with. We're the football people. That's the one thing I worry about.
Right. We'll get to that in a second. I guess my only retort to why I don't think Alec would have been a GM is because I don't know of any single general manager in the NFL who is purely known as an analytics guy that doesn't have one of two things, personnel or cap. And he doesn't do either. He's not personnel guy and he's not a salary cap guy. There are some GMs who are like Omar Khan. He's basically a salary cap guy for the Steelers.
Well, actually, you would be wrong.
I know he's done. I know he's done some scouting.
Rick Spielman pointed this out to me. We had him on Sirius NFL Radio on Saturday, and I forgot that Kwesi.
Kwesi. Okay, I thought you were talking about Omar. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kwesi for Minnesota was the GM. He is analytics. I don't think he is player tape evaluation in his background. And Rick actually brought that up. He said he wondered if we'll see more of baseball where some of the younger guys in their early to mid-30s that don't have a baseball tape evaluation or didn't play, but they're numbers guys, which is, being a baseball guy, become more popular. I'm not saying it's going to happen in the NFL, but being that Kwesi got that job, who knows?
You are absolutely right.
Rule it out.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Kwesi definitely has always been in the research and development department, which is analytics. So that's fair. Okay, so maybe Alec could be, but now the only way you could lose him is to being a general manager.
Correct.
Right. That's the only other job.
Yeah. Again, unless there's some kind of made up title with another team like. Senior assistant general manager.
Only the Eagles do that. So I mean,
exactly right. Right, they come up with these titles. We'll get to that in a second. But because think of it this way though. Remember I said when we put on our show a couple weeks ago, before Omar Khan got named as the GM of the Steelers, we said the smart thing, because we reported I think that there's a possibility Andy would come in as assistant GM for Omar, because as you noted, they've known each other they worked with the Saints together. Mm-hmm. If Omar got the job, and that's exactly what happened. But what I said was that's risky, because if they're really good, Andy's going to be GM somewhere. No one's going to hire Omar as a GM outside the organization. You would think.
Right.
You would think.
Right. You would have thought.
He's not done analytics. He's done contracts and cap.
Right.
So.
Right. So, all right. So, interestingly here, like we've addressed, Alec Halaby and Ferrari are now AGMs, but the Eagles still don't really have that traditional football scout to set a board and make all the great recommendations to Howie on who the team should pursue as far as from the pro level or even in college scouting. So that brings us to some of the scouting promotions. So I don't even know how to attack this because there are so many different guys with different titles. Let's talk about the two veteran guys, Dave Caldwell
Yep.
and Matt Russell. All right, Dave Caldwell is the former Jacksonville Jags GM. Most people know that. He's been with the Eagles as a personnel executive for the last year. He just got promoted to senior personnel director / advisor to the general manager. And the same thing for Matt Russell, who was formerly with the Broncos as a high-ranking executive. He's back with the Eagles where he was back in, I think, '08 under Heckert. And he's also the senior personnel director / advisor to the GM. So obviously Howie lost Tom Donahoe, but he has these two veterans in Russell and Caldwell who are going to fill that role as being an advisor, senior personnel guy. But as far as we know, as we were told, these guys are not in the office every day guys like Andy Weidel.
Yes.
So again, you've got their input, but they're not handling day-to-day operations.
That's
key.
Exactly what I was. Yep, that's where I was going to go. If we were taking an overview, if we said, what's the best case scenario? Have some football people, tape people, guys like Caldwell, who's been a GM before, who's known Howie forever, for well over a decade. I know they've known each other for many years. And Matt Russell, who's known Howie, I would probably even longer than Dave has. I just wish that, obviously you could talk by phone, have a Zoom, whatever you want, do FaceTime. But it's not the same when you're not in the building all the time. That to me, I just, because with Hallaby's title change and having more power, they need football people to, when they're having their meetings in the building, I just know how these things work. When guys are in the building together and they have meetings, when you're face to face with someone, they could see you when you're passionate about something. It changes when you're in front of someone, when you don't agree with them. It's one thing to do it over Zoom, but it's another thing to do it in person. And it would behoove them to have these guys in. I understand they could be in when you have scouting meetings and teams have them like in January, February, and then obviously before the draft. But I'm talking about all year. You like a guy day to day who's a football guy who's in the building. And we can go through this, but I don't know.
Right.
We'll talk about it in a minute. But to me, we'll see. We'll see how much they're in the building. But from day-to-day standpoint, it'd be nice if they had someone that was every day.
All right, let's talk then about the day-to-day guys because to me, these are guys. Every organization has the titles that we're about to discuss, but I feel like these guys have more kind of responsibility because of the lack of somebody above them between them and the GM that is a football scout. Before we get to them, I want to tell everybody to make sure you're checking out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto, so make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. And, of course, we'll pause real quick for a word from our other great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you happen to go out there to Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. All right, now here's some significant names that we have to talk about because of what they are now in this front office. One name is Alan Wolking, right? He gets promoted to Director of Player Personnel. He was the Director of College Scouting, one of their many. Another one is Charles Walls. We've talked about him. He comes in from Cleveland. He was a national scout. He now makes the big jump within the Eagles organization here to Director of Player Personnel. So the Eagles have two Directors of Player Personnel, an in-house guy.
Yeah.
Again, yes, yet again. An in-house guy, Alan Wolking, and a guy they brought in from Cleveland, Charles Walls. They now are sort of the highest football scouting guys under Howie Roseman, I think, based on their title.
Yeah, there is no VP of Player Personnel. In our reporting 3 weeks ago on this promotion for Wolking, we thought it was going to be Assistant Director of Player Personnel. He actually got Director, so congratulations to Alan.
Yep.
He was their Director of College Scouting, so that this almost certainly means he's going to have to be in the building, I would think. I just don't see how you could be a Director of Player Personnel and not be in the building. I don't know of any around the league that would be in the building most of the time. So And you mentioned Charles Walls. Now, this is a big jump for Charles Walls because he was Cleveland's national scout. This is a pretty significant jump for him.
Yeah.
So he and Allen are the directors. They're not. They don't call them co-directors as other teams do. They just to be clear here because everyone's big on titles, and this it's important to the guys themselves because for money purposes and title, it's good to know that they've got these titles because if they get a raid or someone else comes after them, puts a slip in to get them out of the building, they're going to have to be an assistant GM.
Right.
So that's those guys there. So this is a big move for Charles Walls. We talked to a couple of Brown sources and very opinionated guys we got back, which I like. It's good.
Yeah.
That's good that they need that in that building.
Absolutely. You need someone who bangs the table. You just got to be right when you bang the table
Yeah,
for somebody. True. By the way, it's also a big jump because national scouts don't work out of the building every single day. But
no, they don't.
Director of player personnel does. So this is now, as you mentioned, it's a big jump. Normally you see someone go from national scout to something in between that and director of player personnel. Yeah. Which brings us to our next guy, Brandon Hunt from Pittsburgh. He's the director of scouting, which is sort of what he was. Well, with Pittsburgh, he was the director of pro scouting. Now he's the director of scouting. So it's kind of a vague title. It's our understanding he's going to do both pro and college, but he specializes in pro because that's what he did for 13 years in Pittsburgh. I think they're going to try to get his college up to speed. One of the reasons why they brought him in here. So we'll see. But that would, to me, rank under director. Obviously, it ranks under Walls, I would think.
Correct.
And Wolking, because those guys are directors of player personnel, and he is. A lot of teams have a director of pro personnel. That feels like what Brandon Hunt is now, although they are going to try to get him up to speed on some college.
Yeah, well, it would be better. It would be higher than the director of pro scouting.
Mm-hmm.
It would be somewhere between. Again, I've never heard of this title before. You put it out a couple weeks ago. He was going to do pro and college. And then they announced the title. I'm like, okay, what does this mean? I've not heard this title before. Apparently, no one else did. We talked to everyone around the league. We did some fishing. We said, hey, do you know anything? You ever hear this one?
Right.
Well, he's going to oversee scouting for the Eagles, right? Yeah, but they have 2 personnel directors. Oh, didn't know that. Search me. I don't know. And we just know, as you said, he's going to be involved with pro and college. By title, director of player personnel is higher than director of scouting. People we've talked to think they sound to be pretty convinced that it is. But because this is a new title with the Eagles, we've never heard of this one before. I guess you can't. We could say definitely it's higher, but maybe the Eagles have a different view of that. Just based on the people we spoke with who've been in the league many years, they got a kind of a chuckle out of some of these titles. But we later found out that some teams use some of these titles, or have in the past.
They have. We'll get to that.
Yeah, just wasn't known.
So the chuckling is because if Brandon Hunt is the director of scouting, all right, they also promoted Max Gruder from assistant director of pro scouting to director of pro scouting. So the Eagles have a director of pro scouting in Max Gruder and a director of scouting in Brandon Hunt. You want to try to guess which one's the higher ranking guy there?
Well,
director of scouting or director of pro scouting?
Oh, definitely Brandon Hunt. Because
I know he is, but it's just kind of funny because they have the same title.
I know. Remember, did they have 3 college directors at one point?
Yes, they had They had your college director, your assistant college director, scouting director, and then your senior college scouting director. So,
but we know that, and we'll get to that the other promotions because they're doing most of the same stuff they were before. But some guys, through loyalty and being good at what they do and other teams being involved, they got a bump and more money. So good for those guys, which we'll get in a minute. But yeah, I would say with Brandon Hunt, we don't know a whole lot, as you said, because this is a new title we've never heard of before. My guess would be that he will oversee the pro scouting department, the Max Gruder, and I think Matt Holland got a promotion. He was a Northeast Air Scout. He's a senior college scout and pro scout. Like the pro scouting department and the college scouting department. That's what I would think.
You would think. So. All right. I don't know why they didn't just call him director of pro personnel. Like, most teams.
Well,
But
because you mean Brandon Hunt?
well, one of them. Brandon's director of scouting. Max Gruder is director of pro scouting. Usually a team has a director of pro personnel. Jeremy Gray, the next name that they brought in, the guy from University of Arizona, he was given the title assistant director of pro personnel. So who is the director of pro personnel?
Max.
There is none, but there's the director of pro scouting, Max.
Right,
Gruder.
it's the same. Right,
It's verbiage. I get it, but it's just so weird. You know.
I know. It's
go ahead.
Yeah.
To again, to kind of build the ladder here, the really important guys are what we said. Charles Wall and Alan Wolking got really big responsibilities here. They're day-to-day guys. Oh, and Phil Baya is a name we didn't mention. He is now hold your buckle up, folks. He is the director of draft management, which I believe is the first time the Eagles have ever used this title. He is
You're correct.
in charge of managing the draft.
Well,
but he is not the director of college scouting.
Well, he was a southeast area scout.
Yes.
I think he might still be doing that in addition to this new role. Now, my question is, okay, draft management. Well, there's only one NFL draft, but what does that mean? I know the Rams have J.W. Jordan. I've known about him for many years. He's a pretty talented kid. But
as Adam just mentioned, the Rams are the only team that we were able to find that has a director of draft management.
But I don't know do you know anything about what this means?
The only thing I was told by someone who thinks that they know what's going on there is that he is going to be a bit of a liaison between analytics folks, analytics staff, and the scouting staff. He went to Princeton, Phil Baya. He's a smart guy, and usually those guys from Princeton are into the numbers and the analytics as well. So he may have a better understanding or be more into the analytics than someone that just brought in from a different organization, right? So it's my understanding that he's going to help kind of be a liaison there.
They're like most teams. They're, as I understand it, they are able to, by analytics, like let's say they'll have a percentage chance of, like, all teams have this, I'm sure of it. Mm-hmm. They could predict, they have a model of, I don't know how they do this, but for the draft, every team has a predictive model that, okay, here's a percent chance that this player will drop to us.
Right.
And this could be part of what you're saying. Maybe that's part of when we say draft management, I'm trying to come up with some possible things he can do.
Right.
I didn't know he went to Princeton. Interesting. So where did Hallaby go to Ivy League? I
think Hallaby was Harvard, if I'm not mistaken.
Was he? Okay. Yeah. And we know that Andrew Berry went to Harvard. So maybe, and where did Julian go to?
I thought it was also Harvard. Now you're testing my Ivy League memory here.
Yeah, I'm just curious because maybe part of this is they want to have, because I know with the Browns they love having Ivy League people, as someone told me there. So maybe as the Browns and Eagles copy of each other. Who the heck knows?
Yeah. So Phil Baya definitely went to Princeton, and you asked me where Alec Hallaby went.
Yeah.
Almost positive it was Harvard. I'm just trying to double check on that, but yeah.
Okay.
But go ahead. Oh no, he's MIT, right? Was he MIT?
Oh, I have no idea.
I gotta go.
Zero idea. But so look, Hallaby, to answer people's question, he is, as you set this up, both Ferrari and Hallaby technically are the second highest people just by title. Forget about what their background is. Mm-hmm. They're second in personnel to the general manager. That's what Assistant GM is.
Yeah, so that's big. By the way, Hallaby, Harvard, definitely Harvard. So
wow, another Ivy League. Okay,
another Ivy Leaguer. So I knew it was an Ivy League. I thought it was Harvard. So
okay.
Yep. So all right. So any other names that you feel is really critical? I mean, I don't think we have to go through every single name. Like Dom DeSandro, head of security, got promoted again. He's probably he literally is the highest ranking guy in the organization because Dom DeSandro knows everything about everybody and every background. So Dom is the guy, right? He knows where every single body is buried. But we've talked about Dom before. So good and great guy, great dude. So I'm happy for him.
You said 2 weeks ago, and I love that you said the three most important people, other than the general manager to the Eagles, are Dom DeSandro,
Yep.
John Ferrari, who just got promoted as well, and who is the third person?
Joe Panunzio, I believe.
Yeah. Joe Panunzio. Right. What? He is the overseer of special teams for the two young guys who
Sure.
day-to-day coaches. But he knows.
He's the Alabama Intel. That's what he is.
Right. Well, that too. But he's also very well connected because he recruited in college, so he knows the areas, and he's just very important. I give Roseman credit because he just knows certain people and what they can do and the value of them. And we're gonna, as you said earlier, we're gonna find out over time if Ferrari and Hallaby, particularly Hallaby, because he's got so much juice now in personnel. Now, what you said earlier was we're not sure who sets the board. My sense is he's going to be heavily involved in it. We can't say 100% for sure he'll set it, but he's way more important to the draft board than ever he's been with this title. Has to be, because Andy Weidl's out. He set the board. He's now with the Steelers, assistant GM. Right. Dave Koa can't set it. His title's not big enough. You can't have. I mean, I know that in 2016 Tom Donahoe did, because Howie just came back, and there were so many things very fluid. Tom was the one left over, and he did a brilliant job, by the way, in 2016 of setting the board. I just don't see like Dave Caldwell setting it. I guess you could do it, but I don't see that. I don't see it. It's just by title that just wouldn't make much sense. I would hope he would help, because he's obviously a personnel guy by heart, but Hallaby's going to have a major role here. There's no question about it. But I think it's very fair to say, let's see if anything changes, because the last two drafts, as multiple people told us, who have very strong knowledge of kind of what the players mean from a tape study analytic base, the Eagles did a very good job of combining their analytic model is with real world scouting by tape. The question is, will that change going forward? No one can answer that. I have no idea.
Nope, we're gonna have to find out. But you're like, it's fair to point it out. Like we just said, Alec Hallaby, Harvard. Julian Lurie, Harvard. Phil Byer, Princeton. Analytics. It's a big part of what the Eagles have done. You make a great point. We've talked about it. The last two drafts, off seasons, have been good. We've seen them be able to strike the right balance between analytics but also football scouting. All right, but now you have some newer people in charge of the football scouting element of it, and you have people who are in-house who are analytics driven with more power. So we will see how that's manifested going forward. It's a perfect way to lay it out, and hopefully the balance continues to be well. And by the way, I do also think that in a move like this, without a true Andy Weidl replacement, I do feel like the target is back sort of on Howie Roseman. Like, he is leading this department. We know he's been more active for the last year. Some of that was because he lost two really key guys in his front office. Some of that was trending that direction anyway, the way I understand it. And so when you reshape your front office like this and you leave yourself without a number two who has an equivalent level of scouting experience as Andy Weidl, I think you're basically putting it on yourself to continue to be that guy. I mean, he always has the last say and he has the ultimate say, but to me, I always felt comfortable knowing that that Howie always had either Joe Douglas or Andy Weidl there. Like, maybe not an equivalent in ranking, but someone to balance it all. And now it's not there, and it makes me think that Howie is just ready to kind of like, for as long as he's going to be here, seize it and take the power here.
Well, he's worked with Alan Walking for years when Alan was a scout and whatever his elevated role was previously. Now he's going to be in the building as the director of player personnel. So the guys that he's known for years, Ryan Myers, who got a promotion, he won't be in the building, but he's a guy that they all know. But let's finish these off. So, Connor Barwin. So he was
yes,
a special
people were
assistant.
asking us about that. Thank you.
Yeah, so he had that special assistant. He did a bunch of like 3 or 4 different things. Work with the players, help with pass rush, line, whatever he felt he could handle. He's going to continue to help develop players. Some scouting. It's going to be sort of a jack of all trades role, but it's more to the player development side. Now, I don't know off the field if he's going to get involved. That's what Paul Lancaster who got a new title. That's his job was senior director of player engagement. He was director of player engagement. He just got a senior director added to that. He's there. Every team has a player engagement guy. But Connor is a guy that's very well respected, loves the area, as you know, and has been with the Eagles since he was retired in personnel and has worked his way up. So he's very close to Howie, and this is pretty much worked out. Good for him. So he'll continue to work with the players. I don't know if you call him a coach, but he's done some stuff in training camp and in practice from what we understand. But he's really not a coach. He just helps out when needed. So
this sounds like the role that Brian Dawkins had for a year when he joined the front office. He was he was he was an assistant to GM. I think they had the same title, and he was doing some. I remember that he was doing. This was the Super Bowl year. He was helping the safeties out. He was helping the defensive backs out, but he was also working alongside Howie, doing things in scouting, pro scouting, I believe. So do you know? Do you get any sense of where Connor wants to go with this, though? Because this is Brian gave it a year and then he was on to something else. But this is Barwin's couple of years now.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I'm not sure. This is like, I don't know. I don't know if he wants to be a GM. I'm not sure. We just we just know that he's got a jack of all trades and he's got value. This is good. We saw our guy Avant. What he was able to help. 2 years ago. So.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good one because I know a lot of people follow the cap stuff. So Bryce Johnston, who's really smart, he is the guy. Agents say, at least they claim, because they've dealt indirectly with him more with Jake Rosenberg and Howie. But he is the one who came up with these option bonuses. Somehow we don't want to complicate this. There's a guy that used to do cap for an NFL team we're going to have on at some point before training camp. It was brilliant. We're going to have on as a friend of mine, so who's going to help us, who's going to explain these when he comes on our show. But he was the one who found a cap, not a cap loophole, but just a way that to benefit the club with these option bonuses. So from what multiple agents told us that he's the one who came up with it. And so he's been with the team for a while. He went from senior director of football transactions, which is he had not been the only one in the NFL to have a football transactions title, we were told. But now he gets VP of football transactions and strategic planning, which is just a nice way to give him a VP role and he'll make more money. So congratulations to Bryce Johnston there. Other ones we probably should mention. I think Ameena Soliman, who's gonna basically takes over Casey Waddle's role. She was a pro scout, so now what we don't know. Well, no, she actually is going to do that. She's going to take over Casey as the scouting coordinator.
Right.
But also be still a pro scout. So that's a lot of work for her, but apparently she's brilliant. We've heard she's really, really good.
Yes.
So good for her.
Well liked.
And then anything else?
No, I think those were, as far as we can go through other people, but like the assistant equipment manager, great, congrats Nick Still, but I don't think that's going to be really relevant to what we talk about. Same thing with John Liu, the assistant director of football analytics. I mean, that's just a job within the analytics department. The ones I wanted to mention were some names that people might be familiar with, were some of the lower level scouting names. Remember how I had said on a pod a couple of weeks ago that I was told that somebody from the area, like a recognizable name, was going to be part of the scouting department. Yeah. It wound up being two people. Both are from New Jersey, Rod Streeter and Ben Ijalana. They both played locally in college, with Ben playing at Villanova and Rod at Temple. And then they both played in the NFL. So Rod was a wide receiver for the Raiders. Ben was I think he was a lineman for both the Colts and the Jets, if I'm not mistaken.
Known for the Jets, right? Ben Ijalana was mostly a guard with the Jets, who could play right tackle from Nova. And then Rod Streeter. How in the world did the Eagles not sign him as an undrafted free agent? How the hell did they not sign him?
I don't know. They didn't get Robbie Anderson either. The guys go to Temple, they don't get him.
I don't know. It's weird. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they didn't get him, but so Rod Streeter, Northeast Scout. So area scout. So this is the first. He was what was Ben? Wait, one of the two weren't they in a scouting apprentice? Like, weren't they working for Dan Hatman? One of the two of them.
I know Ben Ijalana comes up through the scouting academy. Which is former Eagles advanced scout. Dan Hatman has been. I went through the scouting academy as well. It's a great process. Yeah. Nice. Dan does an amazing job. He has professional coaches who do instruction. He has professional front office people working for him that help you learn the game and watch tape and understand how to grade it and what the criteria are. So I mean, it's an amazing experience.
And Dan's good on Twitter. Oh, one more, and I just found this out on Sunday. We're doing research on these people that we weren't familiar with. So Jared Kilburn, who was with the Eagles a year, who was a scout, basically a scouting assistant last year, who's not going to be a college and pro scout. He actually worked for a guy Cosell. Greg never mentioned him before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't even know what this kid looks like, but good for him. It's kind of cool.
And what about the linebacker, Jordan Dizon?
Yeah, Jordan Dizon. Yeah. In fact, it's really weird. Like, I know this wasn't planned, but Jordan Dizon and Matt Russell both were linebackers for the Lions. Like, what are the chances of that? And then Jordan and Matt worked for the Broncos as well. And by the way, Matt Russell took a year off. He was
correct.
He temporarily retired and then now works for the Eagles. So after he left Denver. And that's it. Yeah, we kind of mentioned the best of our ability to know what people are doing. If you guys have any questions, we're happy to look into it for you. But that's the main stuff.
Yeah.
And
so
go
ahead.
I'm just gonna say they're heavy analytical, but again, people want to. There's nobody to know the percentage. I love to know. I don't know if they know, but we're gonna be fair about this. I'm a little skeptical because of how well they've done the last 2 years. A lot of people said on our message board, why they're not ruining a good thing, but why not have a real football guy, like a guy who's been a personnel director before, some senior guy. Like, I get that Caldwell and Matt Russell are they're part of the staff, but as we said earlier, to finish this off here, why not have someone like a Tom Donahoe, who maybe he's older, who could be in the building a lot? So that's what I would agree with you.
I would agree. So that's what I was going to say. To recap, to make all this, one, big analytics moves were being made just through the promotions there. Two, the lack of somebody equivalent to Andy Weidel to really run the scouting department underneath Howie the way Andy Weidel did. And I know some people are going to say, well, they got Brandon Hunt and he was an AGM, so he's kind of like that guy, but he's not. They didn't hire him to be AGM. They didn't give him that title, and they didn't even give him the highest ranking title in the scouting department. So that's not a knock on Brandon. They just didn't. Howie obviously didn't feel comfortable making him assistant general manager or even director of player personnel. So that just, again, goes to show you that there's a gap here between what they had as far as clout with Andy Weidel and what they have now from a football scouting sector or area there. So there's a gap there. We said the analytics, and we will see. Oh, and Julian Lurie, obviously going to have a role. We'll have to see how that power and how that job responsibility is manifested as we go along. You make a great point. Don't know now. Something we can only judge this time next year, 2 years down the road. And I guarantee you know what Adam and I do, right? If something's great, we'll say it's great. If something's rotten, we'll say it's rotten. We'll find out. We'll know when it's time to know. So on that note, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, Adam. It's been about an hour. So we'll get into some more football-related OTA stuff on our next podcast Thursday morning. Is there anything else you wanted to add there?
No, I was just going to say we'll talk about the Shane Steichen stuff on the Thursday show because that'll lead into our review of OTAs. Instead of piecemealing the OTA stuff, it just wasn't worth it. We'd rather give you one overview of what we've heard, break it down on the show. I also want to talk about the special teams coach who talked.
Michael Clay.
Yeah, Michael Clay as well with Steichen. The Steichen stuff it didn't floor me. I was just surprised because he's so tight-lipped. He never gives you anything. He's a nice guy, but he doesn't really give you a whole lot. And then all of a sudden he just dropped that one. I was like, whoa, okay. And you did it mid-season. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, how about that?
We'll have to go look up those games.
All right,
anyway.
Well, we'll get into all that on the next podcast that drops Thursday morning. That'll do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Big thanks to our new producer, Tyler Strasser, who's doing a great job since taking over for our buddy Hunter Brody, who's on to bigger and better things. And I think most people know by now what those bigger and better things are going to be. And so we congratulate him. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.